And we've seen crazy amounts of FUD. We know that. And we've seen major legs down. People call for manipulation. People call for all these other things. But at the end of the day, the great thing about Bitcoin is they do have this on-chain analysis that we can look at. On today's video, we're going to be going over some on-chain analysis of Bitcoin to understand in a little bit more greater detail where the markets are going, as well as what this means for altcoins. So if any of that sounds good, make sure you stick around for the whole video. If you are new here, we go over all of the news and updates for the most fundamentally sound crypto projects that we have found in the space based on hours of research as well as prior experience with blockchain. If you do enjoy any of that content or you don't want to miss a single video, make sure you subscribe and hit the bell notification, as well as I would appreciate it if you left a like. So let's get straight into it. First thing I want to go over is long-term holders versus short-term holders defined by the article that I'm referring to. And essentially 155 days or more, if you've held on to Bitcoin, you are a long-term holder. Less than that, you're a short-term holder. Historically, the periods of accumulation and growth in long-term investor positions have been in times of relatively weak Bitcoin price action. The opposite is true for short-term traders. So essentially what this is saying is when the price is going up, that's when a lot of short-term traders get interested in Bitcoin, when the price action is more volatile and moving. And what they tend to do is buy when the price is increasing and sell once it starts dying off. Long-term holders buy in a time more or less the bear market where there really is no price action and they believe it is at a place where price is at a fair value. And so the first graph that I want to go over is total supply held by long-term holders. And based on this graph, what we can see, the yellow line is long-term holders and then the price of Bitcoin. We can see that there has been an increase slowly but surely after a little bit of a phase of distribution, as we like to call it, which means that they're slowly offloading their positions in Bitcoin as the price gets more and more volatile and starts kind of going up parabolically. Now we see a little bit of a phase of accumulation again. So now that means that long-term holders are buying. It is a good and a bad thing. It means we could potentially be close to the market bottom, but it also could mean that we are going into an extended phase that might be considered a bear market when we look back in maybe a year or so. And again, I don't really get phased by bear market versus bull. If it is a bear market that we are going into, that just means that there's going to be some time for you to accumulate. I don't honestly believe that this market cycle is anything like we've ever seen before. I think there's a lot of good data and analysis we can use right now, kind of get an understanding of where we are, but at the end of the day, nobody really knows where we're going. So I will just make that very clear. So from October 2020 to April 2021, the positions of short-term holders has increased. So as we know, there's been a huge increase in the price of Bitcoin and a lot of people have gotten in, especially in that January timeframe. A lot of people did get involved in crypto and Bitcoin. Some sold near the peak, but since then there has been a clear downtrend amongst short-term holders. Now, this is really interesting to me. Long-term holders have bought almost 400,000 BTC last month, the month of May. Short-term holders sold more than 420,000 BTC in the last month. As you can see in this graph, the short-term holders, as the number increased, inversely long-term holders, their positions decreased. And this is right around where the price started to go parabolic. So like I said, long-term holders start to decrease in their positions because they've been holding for such a long time. This is when they sell. And then short-term traders are buying into this. And then of course, we're going to find a peak where short-term investors no longer believe that the price can sustain where it is at. And then they start selling. Inversely, long-term holders start accumulating again. And again, this is a sign that we are going into a accumulation phase or a long period where, the price isn't going up necessarily. And again, I don't think this is a bad thing when you are on a very long-term horizon. And then this is again, another graph basically pointing to what we are sort of asserting here. You can see here from the 2018 chart when the distribution of the bull market occurred and then when the accumulation afterwards occurred. And that was clearly right after the peak of the 2018 or 2017-18 cycle. Over here, you can see right at the start of May, basically, we started to see more accumulation as if we were going into the bear market after a long period of distribution from basically September all the way into May, suggesting basically the same thing, that we could potentially be in a accumulation phase that lasts for a couple months, could be 6 months, could be a year, who knows. But at the end of the day, this doesn't mean that, Bitcoin's going to zero or the crypto market is never going to return to the place where it was prior. It just means that we had to cool off, and a cool off could mean more months than we honestly wanted. But like I said, I don't think this cycle is anything like any of the ones we've ever seen before. We'll just have to play it out and wait and see. This is the kind of the transfer of short-term holders into long-term holders, which I think is very interesting. So a lot of people who got interested in Bitcoin in January that were short-term holders at that point who are still holding has actually increased, which is very interesting because this could suggest that a lot of people bought in January, and even though they're near their own cost basis or when they got into their positions, they're not necessarily selling. So we could have seen an onboarding of potentially a lot more long-term hodlers of Bitcoin during this time, which is great to see. And that's why I say, this is not necessarily indicating that we're going to have the exact same cycle or a repeat of a similar cycle in the past, most likely. And based on historical data, which is all we can really look at, yes, we're going to go into another 3-year bear market cycle or whatever it may be. Yeah, we already know this. I think a lot of the problem is that the sentiment doesn't want to accept where we are in the market right now. We were at a place where things were way too parabolic, way too kind of euphoric. The fact that we got to 60K that fast I did not see that coming. And again, like I said, I didn't think we'd get such great buying opportunities this soon, but it only happens when, we go parabolic that fast. Of course, we're going to see some dips. We're going to see some major crashes occur. And we've seen crazy amounts of FUD. We know that. And we've seen major legs down. People call for manipulation. People call for all these other things. But at the end of the day, the great thing about Bitcoin is they do have this on-chain analysis that we can look at. And it suggests in terms of accurate data to me a lot more than maybe just looking at technical analysis on a chart. But as we can see here, the net unrealized profit for long term versus the price, we're almost at this red line right here, the 0.75 mark, where we typically go back into a bear market right here. We look like we are in this phase right now where we're going to go and push through that red line and then go into a place where, this is classified as capitulation. Honestly, my feeling, and of course this is my feeling, and obviously nothing to do with accurate data, is that we probably will bounce off this line and have either a second peak or just range for a little bit. I again don't think that we're going to absolutely just crash like that to 10K like some people believe, but if we do, I hope I have enough fiat on the sidelines waiting, because I would love to get some Bitcoin at 10K. That would be amazing.